Welcome to the Mark Out Joe Adventures in a Cosmic Suit. Now, today I am joined for the second time. Part one of this interview will be left in the description below in the links because a lot of you won't have seen it. But it's my pleasure to welcome back Sol Luckman. Hi, Sol.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. How have you been?
I've been good. I've had a lot going on, a lot of different projects. You know, I do different things, so my energies and my mental capacity end up being somewhat split. But I'm happy to say I'm moving. I like to say I'm kind of moving the pile of dung. You know, I'm like the beetle moving the pile of dung along.
Well, last time we spoke, you just released Kali the Destroyer, your book about the Archons.
Right. Yeah, that's been a while. That was last year. And let's see, the developments around Kali. It won the National Indie Excellence Award here in the States for visionary fiction. So that was pretty cool. And it's now available in a professionally produced audiobook. There's a reader, a wonderful reader named Teresa Dale, who does the reading, and she's very theatrical and amazing because it's really a story about a singer and an actress, and so she really pulls all of that off. And there are actually some moments in the book where she sings, and it's amazing.
Wow.
So the feedback has been really great. We just got that out there a couple of months ago, so it's beginning to percolate and that sort of thing. So that's been very, very exciting. And you know, I'm waiting on a few more contests and that kind of thing around the book to see if it places in those environments. And I've got other projects that I'm looking forward to moving on to at some point.
Yeah, well, once you give birth to something, it kind of doesn't leave you for a bit, does it?
Well, it really doesn't. And someone said a long time ago, or I remember hearing this a long time ago, that a good book will find its level eventually. So you don't necessarily have to, baby it forever for it to continue to thrive, even after you turn your attention elsewhere. And I have to say that's really happened with my previous novel, Snooze, A Story of Awakening, has continued to really get lots of readers and interest over the years. That was published, I think, in 2014, and I really stopped paying much attention several years ago, and it continues to do its thing.
Well, you were probably ahead of your time with that one, and that's why it's picking up.
I think so. I mean, I was riding I was riding the wave of my own interest, but I think that my interests maybe were in alignment with where a lot of people were going. That book is about lucid dreaming and a young boy. It's a coming of age tale. He travels from this realm, space-time, into time-space in search of his father, who's lost there looking for his mother. It's really a complicated family drama in many ways, but it's also a story about activating the siddhis, the powers within us, the occult powers that have to do with our ability to utilize telekinesis or to fly or to become small or large, this kind of thing.
Fantastic. I'm just trying
to see that.
Make sure everybody can see.
You're spinning, so I think we blipped for the moment.
Oh, did we? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay,
we're back.
Cool. So, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I wanted to mention also, in terms of my projects, that I've got an interview coming up. I think it's mid-July. I'll post this on my blog. That's at snooze2awaken.com. And it's about the healing work I do. And I don't know if you know anything about that, Mark.
I don't think I do.
Yeah, I came to you when Kali was being published, and we talked about that. But I have a long story involving my own illness and how I got well using a form of energy healing, sound healing, and that has really thrived and has been experienced by literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people around the world over the last 15 to 20 years.
Wow.
So I could share a little bit about that. First things first, I'm going to be doing an interview with Akurta Melchizedek in the what's called the Global DNA Series in July. It's the DNA Series 4, and there's a number of people, panelists, like Alfred Lambermont Weber is going to be one of the panelists, and other people who are going to be speaking. So that's going to be an interesting group of people to interact with.
That'd be very interesting. I've been following Alfred for about 10 years.
Yeah, so there's some other people you probably are familiar with. Let me see if I can pull up. Let's see who's on the roster there. Let me just see if there's something that I can quickly pull up. I think there is. Let me just check that out. It's a cool group. You know, lots of people doing very interesting things. I mean, they're not all, you know, what I would call like absolutely aligned, but who cares? I mean, it's a really nice thing that she's put together. This Akurta has put together, and we did a pre-recording of our interview, and so yeah, it's got Fernando Vasa is going to be on there. He does holofractal creation work. You've got Alfred, like I mentioned. There's Mary Rodwell, Gerald Pollock, who's, you know, doing a lot of work on the 4th phase of water. It's funny when you go to look at my Amazon profile, very often you'll see his name mentioned as one of the authors that, you know, people also bought books by this author. So Gerald Pollock and I apparently have something in common where people are reaching out across. I mean, he's looking at energetic potentials for healing in water. So, and I'm looking at energy involving DNA and that kind of thing. So there would be some natural crossover there.
Yeah.
So it's a good group. You know, that's just there's about 20 odd people who are going to be involved in that.
It sounds like an amazing party.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get to interact except maybe one time in a post party environment. If I end up doing that, I've got some conflict in my schedule, so I don't know if I'll do that. But otherwise, it's just a series of interviews that you get to participate in. And Akurta she works with a lot of DNA and consciousness research, and so she is an intelligent interviewer on these subjects and makes it entertaining.
Always good. Always a good thing.
Always good, yeah. So I got sick years ago. You know, I got some, you know, some travel, let's say, some travel quote unquote requirements inserted into my body.
Oh no, this is ringing a bell now. Yeah,
yeah, and I got really sick and ended up, you know, having a dark night of the soul for about a decade when I went into a kind of autoimmune hell.
And you saved yourself because did you try allopathic stuff to get out of that, or did you?
Oh yeah, I did. I started out there, and I got diagnosed with depression. You know, as if that could explain all of my physical breakdown. I had all kinds of allergies, and I was losing weight. I was thin as a rail. It was really nightmarish because I had been very athletic, and then I turned to the alternative world, which I found rather bewildering. I spent a lot of money doing a lot of things that didn't help me at all.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of things did help me, and they began to teach me more about bioenergy. And so I'm very thankful for those modalities. One was Qigong.
Mm-hmm.
I went out to New Mexico and studied with a very gifted teacher who had been sick himself with a similar situation years prior to that. And that helped me get back on my feet to a certain extent, although it didn't exactly cure me. It just stabilized me. And then I discovered allergy elimination technique. I don't know, Mark, if you're familiar with that.
I don't think I am.
It was developed originally by I think she's a naturopath. Her name was Nembudrapad, and she wrote a book on the subject. I forget the name of the book now, but it's Nembudrapad's Allergy Elimination Technique. And then there was a chiropractor named Ellen Cutler who took the basic concept and began to develop it. And then I went to see somebody who had studied with Ellen, who had begun developing her own offshoot of Ellen's work. And so I ended up getting some benefit from that, and then learning how to do it, and then doing it for people. And that created the environment where I was able to do all of this kinesiology and testing on people that became kind of the I don't know, the baseline or groundwork for my later research in sound healing that led to the regenetics method. I was able to get a lot of data doing all these kinesiological tests on a bunch of different people who came in with a variety of problems. And so I began to see connections that I hadn't thought about, and I was able to document them. I had an assistant, Lee, who's my partner. She was assisting me in this process, and we began crunching all that data, and it was really rather remarkable.
Yeah, that sounds remarkable. So how much data did you gather?
Well, really a ton. We tested for all kinds of things having to do with the nature, for example, of the chakras, their number and nature of them, their relationship to the auric fields, or the kind of sonic, hypersonic fields that are in connection with the chakras, the nature of this reality in relation to a kind of parallel reality where our energetic blueprints are. And I was able to map a lot of this information onto my understanding of sort of my growing understanding of torsion physics and subtle energies, and how those energies interface with the apparently dormant or latent parts of our DNA, and then how that relates to physical healing and the relationship with consciousness and self-empowerment and sovereignty and kundalini, and all of it just sort of became a gestalt in my understanding as the work developed. And then we tried the work on ourselves as we became our own guinea pigs. And I was still very sick at the time. We had traveled to Brazil, back to the scene of the crime, as it were. And we had Lee and I had a series of these amazing kind of, I would call them metaphysical or visionary experiences. We saw these crazy lights that came at us across the water. And, I know that Greg of Higher Side Chats, when I interviewed with him a couple years ago, he called me a contactee. I'd never been called a contactee. And I said, well, maybe I was, but I always thought of it as like my higher self coming to just, greet me and give me information. But the upshot of it is that these lights came across the water on a beach in Brazil where Brigitte Bardot used to live, and shined into us, and then they went out. But we could feel something had changed. And when we went home that night, when we dreamed, we began dreaming of all of these linguistic vowel codes. And we both woke up with all of this codage, this coding in us, and we began talking about how to utilize that. And we realized that we were supposed to sing or chant one series of vowels while thinking a complementary series of vowels during the chanting. And so that's sound combined with light. And when we did that, it was miraculous. I immediately began to purge and heal. Lee did as well. Her asthma went away. Her scoliosis straightened a good bit. And I began really going through profound changes. I was down to the point where I could only eat unseasoned meat and vegetables. Anything else would absolutely wreck me from an allergy standpoint. And I began being able to eat what I would call normal food again very soon after that, which was, that in itself was an absolute miracle. But my energy began to come back. I began being able to exercise again. And then, eventually I could have a beer if I wanted one, which would have been, that would have been death just a year prior to that. It would have wiped me out for like a month. So that was really cool.
So how did you just woke up basically with these tones, these codes?
Yeah, we did with these. I kind of saw them visually, and I think Lee did too. It's been a while, so I'd have to talk with her to be sure exactly how that worked for her. But it was like seeing a list of vowels going together. I mean, there's literally a part of Kali the Destroyer which is kind of funny, that goes into this. It's almost like Kali is a bit of as a bit of a primer for regenetics. And I did that intentionally. I wanted people to see it from a different perspective. So I wrote that into that novel. So there's a whole scene where Callie is learning how to do what I'm describing.
Well, can you describe how you would teach somebody to do this?
Yeah, I can describe that. I mean, well, first of all, I wrote a book. It's called Potentiate Your DNA, and it teaches you how to do it. And I'm also in the process of producing a short audio, mostly audio with some visual stuff, but mostly just me talking about how to do it as a complimentary webinar to go with Potentiate Your DNA. But I mean, Potentiate Your DNA has been out there for like 13 years. It's sold tens of thousands of copies. I mean, it's you know, it's kind of all over the place. It's going to be in its third language when the French edition comes out. It's also in Spanish. So it's definitely been as a unique resource, an individual way of a single way of doing it has been sufficient to teach people how to do the work for themselves. So they can start doing that. So that's pretty cool. Let me see here. There's an interesting moment. Let me see if I can pull that up. So
I'm just showing people where they can get some free download sample chapters, which is at
yeah, and that's great. Thank you. You can download sample chapters. There's also on I have a Substack now. It's saulluckman.substack.com, and there's a paid option. And for, you know, about like a Netflix subscription or something like that, you can access Potentiate Your DNA, a special online ebook of that, as well as Callie the Destroyer. And that's also where I'm going to be putting the webinar when it's finished in the next month or so, as well as additional free content. I'm going to be basically stacking it full of all kinds of really cool free content over the next, you know, months and years. It's gonna be kind of a warehouse for some of my premium and exclusive stuff. So saulluckman.substack.com. That's been a kind of fun environment. But I was going to, so yeah, so here is a conversation. If you just humor me for a moment, and sometimes people say, don't read from your own stuff. It's egotistical. Well, I'm just trying to share a point here. That's just why I would like to do that. So you have a being named Thelete speaking with Callie, who is the star of the show. And I'll just read a little bit since you asked the question, and this is the shortest way to answer that question. So he sits cross-legged on one of the deerskins and motioned for Callie to sit mirroring him on the other. Do you remember the 2 lines of vows your mother wrote in her secret note? Yeah, it took forever memorizing them, she said. They're burned into my brain. Can you say them to me slowly, one line at a time? A-E-I-I-U-I-O-O-U-U-I-A-O. Good. And then lowercase U-U-O-E-A-A-A-I-A-A-E-I-A. Excellent. By any chance, do you know Spanish? I've taken a year, but I wouldn't say I know Spanish. But have you been taught the rules of Spanish pronunciation? Claro que sí. Then I want you to repeat the lines again. But this time, instead of pronouncing the vowels as letters of the English alphabet, pronounce them as if they were in Spanish words. Like this. A, E, O, I, U, I. Exactly. Only do not separate the sounds. Let them flow together as if forming a single word. O, U, I, E, O, continued Callie. U, O, E, I, E, I, E, A. Perfect. Just one question. Thelete laughed. Only one? He asked with a wink. Only one that shouldn't be terribly mistimed. Why was the first line of vowels capitalized, while the second one was lowercase? You are right. The question is only slightly mistimed. I will answer it momentarily. But first, can you sing this note with conviction and a higher octave? Taking a deep breath from his diaphragm, he sang the vowel O to a mid-range note for a solid 10 seconds. His vibrato was so strong the owl feathers in his headdress danced. The impressive sound of his voice made Callie think of Italian opera. That was amazing, she couldn't help exclaiming. What note were you singing? It was beautiful, but also a little odd. You have a keen ear. We refer to the standard note, which I was singing in a lower octave, as gaur, meaning home. Others have called it mi. It is not to be confused with the E in your diatonic scale. Never heard of it. Not surprising. The musical scale used by the bird tribes is the original musical scale. What does that even mean? The creational scale, in tandem with sacred vowels, was used to fashion the universe and all life herein. The world, you might say, was literally spoken, or rather sung, into being. Callie recalled the two adult figures she'd watched singing beside the cosmic ocean in her delirium. In the beginning was the Word.
Mm-hmm.
Many have interpreted this line from your Bible as a metaphor. Emphatically, it is not. The creational scale was employed for millennia in cultures everywhere for healing and connecting with the originator. The 5 English vowels, which represent a rough distillation of many vowels back to their primordial roots, match the 5 nucleotide bases of DNA and RNA. Thus, a properly performed bird song heals at the genetic level. And I'll stop there.
That's fabulous. Yeah, this idea of the universe being built on the sound wave has been around for me for a while, and it's actually popped up quite a lot on recent shows. The closest experience I've got to what you're talking about was an ayahuasca retreat when the spirit had me up against the wall on my vocal cords, tuning me in so that I could clear chakras.
I love it. I love it. Have you read Jeremy Narby's The Cosmic Serpent, DNA and the Origins of Knowledge?
I have not.
He's a French anthropologist. He was mainstream at one point. I think he worked in a university, and then he went into this world of very alternative stuff. I don't know what he's doing currently, but it's sort of about what you just described. It's about shamans using ayahuasca to connect with the cosmic serpent to get the right sounds to heal their DNA.
Yeah, it was an extraordinary experience for me because literally it was like there were hands on me and it was doing this on my vocal cords until I got the right pitch, and it was really hard work, and we had to go through each of the chakras.
I love it.
And then a month later I found myself in outside on this hotel in Morocco surrounded by 20 women, and I was clearing all their chakras.
So you could remember enough to do that in the real world, as it were?
I've never forgotten it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because it embed. And the other thing with ayahuasca is you can also see the music.
Right.
When the music's playing, you see the notes.
Yep.
Well, I did. I mean, I'm not saying everybody.
Well, actually, Narby talks about this exact phenomenon.
Yeah, I've just found his book on. I'm just going to share this with everybody.
It's a fantastic book.
I need to read this book. So many books, so little time.
I know, it's really true. This is a good one. I would move this one up towards the top of the list because it's a very important book.
Yes. How have I not come across that before? Well, yeah, I mean, all this makes complete sense. You're a lot further into it than anybody I've ever spoken to before, but it all makes complete sense. So what perhaps of, this book that you've written, which is on the tip of my tongue. This is my 4th interview today, so I might be a little bit slow.
Oh, the Potentiate Your DNA book?
Yeah, Potentiate Your DNA.
Mm-hmm.
That's something people can get to help themselves.
Right. So yeah, you learn how to do potentiation, which is the first DNA activation in the regenetics method. There are 4 primary activations, so the other 3 are not taught. But potentiation is really substantial by itself. And once you initiate it through a 30-minute session, it unfolds over about a 9-month period that we call a gestation cycle.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah, obviously. So there's a lot of rebirth that does happen in many aspects of one's being during that period of time. So you're doing a 30-minute session that initiates a process that just rolls out. And it's not as if you have to do anything else except live your life. Now, we do have some tools for tracking the energy, because the energy wave that you're initiating with this process is actually moving through your chakras and your fields. And it's on a timeline, and we have charts and for showing how that moves, how the wave moves through you, and what is related to each of the fields that the wave is currently in. So, for example, if it's in, let's say you're in a certain family, energy family, you might be in the 6th chakra / field. And that's where you would have your respiratory system, your auditory system, and your skin. All of your dermal system would be there. You would have bacteria would be governed by that field and that sort of thing. So it might be common to have a lung clearing, for example, or the skin venting during that time frame. And it's very helpful to know that you're there and those are the elements in play, and it makes sense of what you're experiencing.
Whew, this is good stuff. I'm actually just flicking through your potentiation electromagnetic repatterning page whilst you were talking now.
Right. So yeah, so you can see some of the things that get commonly reported. People end up with more energy, and maybe there's less inflammation, and so there's less pain, that kind of thing. There's a lot of really good benefits that can come from it. Some of them are physical, but that others would be mental, emotional, or even spiritual.
And have you had increased interest in this since we entered the era of quarantine?
Yeah, I would say the interest in this work, generally speaking, has just increased year after year. There was a bit of a surge during the last couple of years when people probably had more time and they were sitting in front of their computers a little bit more. And that makes sense, because historically we noticed, for example, that we have less of hubbub around what we're doing in the summertime, which would make sense, even though we do have a lot of people down under and other places, south of the border, as it were, that do this work. But still, we are based in North America, so you could expect that the Northern Hemisphere would be, more active outside the summer months, right? And that's what we see.
And this is just a beautiful example of how where we're heading, I think, in terms of our abilities to heal ourselves and others with this type of knowledge.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I've been inspired by so many people on this journey, and I try to give credit as much as possible, even though you get inspired by things that are hard to even track down at some point. But for example, Ken Carey, are you familiar with any of his books?
Ringing a bell, but
he wrote the Starseed trilogy. Let's see. Let me see if I can pull him up on the website here. Wonderful writer, just an absolute wonderful writer about sort of the
transmission.
Yeah, Starseed Transmissions. That's what they were. And it's a series of books that are very, very profound. And he had a phrase in there called that he utilized, and it was songs of distinction. And he was saying that I think this was in Starseed, the Third Millennium. He wrote, "When you love fully without reservation, you feel, sense, and move within love's rhythmic current. The definition songs that pulse through your soul are free to call out the excellence of your surroundings. As you allow love to flow out from within you, you will remember things that you had forgotten about these physical realms. You will remember that everything has a soul song that is at once its definition and its expression. You will recognize all that lives in this blessed biosphere as objectifications of your own melodies. And consciously then you will sing the songs of distinction, the songs that call forth all that appears in this planetary environment." A sculptor can always use hammer and chisel, but if she can sing the right songs, the songs that speak the true names, the songs that go to the very heart of the matter with which she works, she can inspire that matter to participate intelligently in its own development and recreation. So obviously, doing what I was doing already, Regenetics was already being developed when I encountered his work. But oh my goodness, that spoke to me. And when we created a supplemental series of activations for strengthening glands and organ systems, we called them Songs of Distinction.
Wow. You're giving me a lot of work to do here, Sol. I'm going to have to take a month off just to catch up with this stuff.
Well, you're always doing fascinating things. So, it's kind of like, you're always on the pulse one way or another. There's so many people who are talking about this kind of thing.
Who are or aren't?
Who are really? I mean, obviously there's a lot of normies out there too, but I mean, I would say that when I first started doing potentiation, and it's done remotely, we don't get on the phone or anything like that. It's completely a remote ceremony unless you're doing it for yourself or you're going to see somebody in person. But that was a hard sell, early on. And now nobody bats an eye. It is absolutely amazing how much people have embraced non-locality. It's what Dr. Larry Dossey would call Era 3 or non-local medicine. That is the frontier. And he called this 20 years ago in Reinventing Medicine. He said that we've moved from Era 1 medicine, which is body-based mechanical medicine, to Era 2 medicine, which is epigenetic medicine. That's my interpretation, epigenetic, but he called that mind-body medicine, power, positive thinking, that sort of thing. And we are striding into Era 3 medicine, which is non-local medicine, which is not using affirmations or power, positive thinking or anything like that. It's literally interacting with the source field.
Yeah, I had a healing about a month ago that was exactly the same as that. And I was chuckling to myself because I got myself ready to have a Zoom call. And then I realized that the whole thing was, sorry, when my kids just came in, didn't lock the door. It's been a long day.
Children and animals will show up when this stuff is being talked about or when these sessions are being performed. It is miraculous. And they will just sometimes just sit very quietly and uncharacteristically while it's happening.
That is interesting because whenever I meditate in the pyramid or turn on my Rife machine, the cat appears within a matter of 30 seconds.
There you go.
And I've just got this water installed, this quantum water system called Grander recently, which here's a Grander board for everybody to see. Which
how do you spell that?
Grander. I think you'd be interested in this guy. He was called Johann Grander. I think he was Austrian, and he created a free energy machine in his shed. And then he got offered lots of money for it. He turned that down. Then they offered to kill him. He turned that down. But part of his work meant that he discovered the incredible healing power of this energetic water. So this is, I actually met some Austrians on a boat in Donegal about 2 months ago who'd heard of him and were laughing at me because they all thought he was nuts. But he, it energizes the water. You should see the size of my plants since I've installed this. It's unreal.
Wow. I'm looking at boards, the energy boards.
Yeah, this is an energy board. This has got the water inside it.
Cool. I can't really see you on video. You're spinning on my system, so if I sound like I'm a little out of the loop, I'm just getting a blank spinny. But I'm glad we're able to hear each other.
No, I'm showing other people that I've got this little metal thing that sits in my pocket, which means I'm constantly next to the water, and the water transmits whatever's near it that's got water in it, which is me, which is amazing. But the plant, I've got a basil plant here that these things from the supermarket normally die after a week. and because the water here is so terrible, and this basil plant's about 4 foot high in my kitchen. It's nuts.
Oh, that's a scream. Well, water is one of the new frontiers in all of this. A couple of people that I've learned a lot from, Dr. Tom Cowan and Dr. Andrew Kaufman, are both really focused on it right now. I only recently publicly, in my interview with Kurt Melchizedek for the DNA series that I mentioned earlier, I only mentioned this piece of the regenetics model where you're not just directly activating the DNA. You are to a certain extent, but really the DNA is surrounded by about 10 molecules of water. And so what you're doing is you're using a kind of emoto effect to structure the water around the DNA, and that's then communicating that signature to the DNA, and then the DNA is communicating with the energy field.
Yeah. Absolutely. And where are you on DNA upgrades that have been going on the last decade or so?
You mean cosmically speaking, or
yeah.
Well, I think, first of all, there was research done years ago by a fellow named John Hawkes, who was a scientist. I think he was at the University of Wisconsin. I think I've got his name right. And he was looking at what had been happening to DNA over the last many hundreds of years, or even thousands of years, according to his data. And he was showing really remarkable DNA upgrades into the modern era that appeared to be exponentially increasing in real time. So there's actually some, what I would call hard scientific data to support this notion of these DNA upgrades that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
I know in my work my first book was called Conscious Healing, and then Potentiate Your DNA. And certainly one of the models that I'm working off of is the idea that there is some kind of consciousness increase going on. And it's almost impossible to increase consciousness, or maybe it is impossible, without actually changing your DNA, because you'll automatically, at the very least, epigenetically turn on and off genes. So I believe all of that. I don't know. I don't necessarily embrace some of the more, I don't know how to explain it, but the more exopolitical explanations of what's going on. I know that a lot of people are into that, but I'm not so much into that. I think that we live on an intelligent planet that is our mother, and that we're given everything we need to evolve on our own terms without extraterrestrial intervention. So I choose to look at that from an empowered state and say that my take is that a lot of the Anunnaki stuff is probably a kind of psyop to make us feel small and controlled.
Yeah, that is interesting. I've been speaking to a few people recently that have been channeling their higher selves and have some. I'm going to go deeper into the Anunnaki stuff soon, because I'm not sure. It is very interesting. I'm just looking at this website, the globaldnasummit.com.
Oh yeah, right. Thanks for pulling that up.
Yeah, and I can't believe even there you still don't show your face.
No, I never do. I never did when everything kicked off with the internet and I became a public figure, and I haven't since. And it's actually been a mentally and emotionally healthy way of never letting myself get sucked into the guru trap.
Yeah.
That has been pulling and tugging on me for a long time, because people want to kind of aggrandize my experiences and what I've been able to achieve. And I think it's really cool what I've been able to do, but basically it just came through me. And the amount I had to suffer to actually make that possible, I would never wish on anybody. And there's nothing at all honorable or noble about that. It was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from it. There's a chapter in Potentiate Your DNA called Illness as a Teacher. And certainly that's an important piece for a lot of people, but I don't think it's the only way we can learn and consciously evolve.
Well, it does seem to me that most of the people that have that are teaching and writing at your level have all been through something terrible.
It really does, whether that's, a financial implosion or some awful breakup with a loved one, or, loss of a child, just, it's very, very intense what we experience here in the veil of forgetting.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at Akurdo. I've not heard of her before, but she looks really friendly.
Yeah, she's very friendly. She's very bright and lively, entertaining. She's a good person to organize this type of conference.
I must have been around for a while now, because there's a couple of people on here I've spoken to.
Yeah, right. Who have you spoken to there in the list? I'm looking right now.
She's gonna tell me off for getting her name wrong, but it's spelt Waxila Sananda.
Okay, yes. Mm-hmm.
But I know I've said it wrong, and if she's watching, I do apologize. She did a spiritual summit. I think she's in Florida, and she got me on a Zoom call, and she said, "You're not like other spiritual people." And I went, "Oh, no, I'm not." It's really nice.
Well, you had your own, kind of amazing pathway into this, from what I've learned from you and elsewhere, coming from more of an entertainment industry background.
Well, if you call the Royal Air Force an entertainment industry, then yeah, I suppose you're right.
Yeah, but then you were like weren't you doing all this like comedy and stuff? And
yeah. I've done loads of different things: comedy, journalism, theatre, film.
Yeah.
Piloting. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. But anyway, I'm pulling this up for people that are watching that would be interested. The globaldnasummit.com. This looks really good.
It kicks off July 7th and it runs through the 22nd. I think my interview is on the 21st. Let me verify that.
That is a good look. That is a very interesting summit.
Yeah, I thought so too. She just reached out to me. I was not familiar with her work, and she reached out to me and said that she had been following my work for a while, which I'm like, why would you follow me? But let's see here. Where is that? Yes, my interview will be made available on Thursday, July 7th at 10 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. It's very cool stuff.
A lot of people are organizing these things. Back in December, I spoke at an online event that was organized by Alpha Vedic, Mike Winter at Alpha Vedic, and Alex Zek.
Mm-hmm.
And it was called The Event, and and that had a bunch of different people: Kelly Brogan, Sayer G, Andrew Kaufman, Tom Cowan. Lots and lots of people showing up. Zuby was there. All kinds of interesting folks were part of this, multi-day set of speakers, right? And they pooled the resources for that so that everybody was helping market it through their contact lists. And then they were doing a kind of a payout based on an affiliate model. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't even think I had that big a network or whatever. And I ended up getting a check for so much more money than I thought that I would have been possible. I hadn't even really been following, any of the signups or anything like that. So that was really, really cool. And I know some people made, a good bit of money. And I would say that that's wonderful, because most of the people in this field aren't making a lot of money. You're totally out there on your own. You don't have corporate support. It's really a difficult thing. So I love to see these new Aquarian models being introduced where we're helping each other.
Absolutely. I mean, that the one that I did was similar. It was like it was down to us to promote it and cross promote each other and give something away. I didn't receive any money for that one, but it's like the course that I released last year. I said, look, it's worth this. I'm going to charge this, but if you've got no money, you can have it for free. And that one thing got me an interview with Martin Geddes, who
cool, yeah,
who'd not given an interview in over a year, because he just like the attitude. And then the other thing that we've been doing is if we've created things that have taken time and money to create, we say, look, we think it's worth this. You can have it for a minimum of this. If you can afford more, pay more. And if you haven't, and again, if you're really broke, just let us know and we'll let you in for free. And I think this is like crossover business type. Yeah, you call it Aquarian model. I call it like sort of 5D business, but it's we're still in the money system. We still have to buy food. We still have to live. But more of us are understanding that there are better ways of doing business and better ways of charging people that are inclusive and rely upon trusting people.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Lee and I came to that conclusion quite some time ago, and we began offering potentiation usually the first Sunday of every month. This month it's different because of July 4th here in the States. But we have a worldwide potentiation ceremony where you can pay as much or as little as you want, including just doing it for free. And then we have recommendations for ways people can help get the word out, share the information, the website, that kind of thing, as a form of energy exchange. One of the strange things that we noticed early on is that when we just simply gave things away for free without at least giving people the opportunity to give back, the work did not work as well.
Interesting.
And
because they're not emotionally invested.
Yeah, and there's some kind of cosmic thing going on, or some kind of law of the universe or energy that has to do with giving and receiving.
100%. I mean, I remember my friend opened a comedy club 30 years ago in Manchester in England, and he didn't want to charge people to come in because the venue was paying him money he could afford to pay the comedians. And I said, I don't think that's a good idea. And he was like, no, he was really adamant. He wanted to make it free. And the club completely failed for the first 2 weeks because nobody had invested a penny, and they just talked all the way through the acts. And then I said, look, just charge 50p, a dime, whatever, just something. And then the whole place is still running 30 years later, but it's still the cheapest comedy club in England.
So it was just a token, right? And that's all it took.
That's all it took. And it was just that. I found that very interesting, and I took that into my business career. I mean, I do offer things for free, but I say, look, if you've got the money, pay. It's an energy exchange. And often the ones who don't pay are often the hardest, but I still want to help them.
Yeah, there is a kind of entitlement thing that I see among certain people. I don't know that you could pin that on any single demographic. I see it kind of different in different people, but yeah, I want to help people too, but at the same time, I like to stand in my power, and I do so much. I put so much out there for free. I have this blog over at Snooze to Awaken that's just constantly downloading all kinds of cool information for people to really consider, things that could change their lives, keep them safe, healthier, whatever, and there's a lot of work that goes into all of this stuff online, and I don't ask for any money for that. I just have a little donation thing, and it's amazing. People donate, just out of the blue, and they've donated for years around the regenetics work. It's been amazing. I mean, I'm so grateful and kind of amazed sometimes that people would actually do that.
Well, the quality of your output is so high, and when you have a high quality output, people really appreciate it, especially in the areas that you're working in, because you're dealing with people who are evolving. They're not generally wankers, are they?
Unless it's a bad day.
Yeah. Everybody's entitled to have a bad day. But,
yeah, I mean, I'm here sometimes, but I try to get over that as quickly as I can.
Yeah, I just stay out of people's way if I feel like that.
Yeah, right. Especially when you can,
Yeah. So where do you think we're at? I mean, we didn't really go deep into the book in this chat. I reckon anybody watching this, look, to be honest, I haven't read Saul's book either, but I really would like to. And
would you like me to send you a download code for the ebook or for the audiobook of Callie?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Scott McKay, Patriot Street Fighter, he reached out to me the other day, and I just figured out how to do this, and I have a limited number of these that I can send to people who are genuinely
I don't mind. No, I'll buy it. I don't want it.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
Well, no, I'm very happy to send it to you if that's something you're interested in. It's a great thing. I didn't know I had that available to me. So I sent one to him, and so I'm looking forward to interviewing with him at some point.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of good work. I've never met him though, but seen him from afar. No, I want to read. No, I'm just getting more interested because in the book you do talk about the Archons, and
right.
I wonder if you'd mind touching upon that subject in light of where we are now compared to where we were a year ago.
Yeah, the Archon question is, I think it's really in many ways central to any discussion that we might have about like what's going on, what's actually happening here. It doesn't necessarily mean that we would know everything there is to know about the Archons or whatever. So I wrote an article. I'll just refer people to this, and I'll share some of the points that I made on June 17th at snooze2awaken.com. It's an article I wrote called "A Simply or Not So Simply Mind-Blowing Video on How a Parasitic Consciousness Has Infected Our World and What We Can Do About It." And so I start by looking a little bit at Paul Levy's work. He wrote "Dispelling Wetiko."
Yeah, I've got that next to my bed.
Okay, "Breaking the Curse of Evil." He has a kind of Native American spin on this mind control that's going on. So the description is really meaningful, just to let people know what he's talking about. In a nutshell, he says or his publisher says, there is a contagious psychospiritual disease of the soul, a parasite of the mind that is currently being acted out en masse on the world stage via a collective psychosis of titanic proportions. This mind virus, which Native Americans have called Wetiko, covertly operates through the unconscious blind spots in the human psyche, rendering people oblivious to their own madness and compelling them to act against their own best interests. So if you can look at what's gone on in the last 2.5 years or so with that lens, it's very informative.
Yeah,
absolutely. So there's another wonderful scholar named John Lash who wrote a book called "Not in His Image: Sacred Vision, Sacred Ecology, and the Future of Belief." And I'll be, blogging more about John over time because he is one of the main sources for the some of the background material in Kali the Destroyer. It's what he calls the fallen goddess scenario, and it's basically the story of how our planet was originally just a goddess. She was a kind of a force of the universe, or whatever, however you want to configure that. Could be multidimensional or hyperdimensional, but in any case, she sort of fell from grace and ended up creating the Archons, even as she was trying to deliver our genetic signature to this world so that we could engage in the human experiment. So we were actually her children. She was kind of a geneticist, even though she was a goddess. That's what she was doing this, I'm sure, using sound and light, very much like what we talk about in regenetics. And she was configuring genetics for this experiment. And she ended up becoming the planet after creating this race of half organic, half Borg-like beings called the Archons in Gnostic texts. So John writes about this very specifically from a highly scholarly point of view. I mean, he's been compared to Joseph Campbell. He is a serious scholar.
What's his name again? I'm just going to find him on
John Lash. John Lamb, like the animal Lamb Lash. And so I took that basic scenario of the fallen goddess and the creation of the Archons and put it in a futuristic dystopian novel where I retell the story of the fallen goddess, but as a work of fiction. And, you know, I've said in various interviews that the whole book that this whole novel, Cali the Destroyer, is kind of a rabbit hole of rabbit holes. It's just, you know, it just keeps going all over the place. But what it really does in context of this discussion is it points the finger at the puppet masters and whoever these people are who have been manipulating our religions and governments and monarchies and corporations, armies, etc., you know, for so long, and how they could do this over centuries as with no discontinuity, as if there was some kind of mind controlling the whole operation that wasn't limited to a human lifespan. And that's what the Archons are doing. They are, I would argue, they are the consciousness behind this dystopian world that we find ourselves in at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say is that there is some force going on in our world that is disrupting their plans, even as they attempt to solidify those plans.
Mm-hmm.
And this is related to the epigraph of my book. And I'll read that epigraph because it is absolutely pertinent to these times.
Mm-hmm.
It's Sophia speaking to the Lord Archon. This is from On the Origin of the World. It's one of the ancient Gnostic texts that were rediscovered in Egypt back in the 40s. And this is exactly where we are. She says, "You are mistaken, blind one." She's talking to the Lord Archon, also known as the Demiurge, who is in fact blind. He thinks he's God, but he's blind as a bat, and he's a total overweening prick. So she says, "There is an immortal child of light who came into this realm before you," and that would be kind of like us, or the awakening part of us. "An immortal child of light who came into this realm before you and who will appear among your duplicate forms," meaning who will appear among the archontified multitudes of sleepwalking, mind-controlled people. So this child of light will appear among your duplicate forms in your simulated world. And in the consummation of all your work, so right when you're about to win, their entire deficiency of truth will be revealed and dissolved by this luminous child. So I think we are exiting the revelation period where all of this truth is coming to light, and we are about to enter the dissolution period where we tear it down.
Oh, yes. We're on the same page there.
And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So am I.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I knew you'd probably resonate to some degree with that. So
yeah, well, you know, we're manifesting it as well because we are the creators.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I've gotten into sharing Neville Goddard's work a lot recently. And are you familiar with him?
Do you know, talking to you sometimes reminds me of being at university.
Well, I did teach.
I feel a little bit stupid.
But he was, you know, he was writing in as far back, I think, as the 30s and 40s.
Neville Goddard.
Neville Goddard, yes.
Yeah, got him.
And he wrote a bunch of different books. And what he focused on was his interpretation of what God is. And he said that the scriptures are not about physical events. They're full of contradictions. They're basically a big story, and it's a story about us, and it's specifically about the part of us that is God, which I'm going to call the human imagination. So his teaching is about using the human imagination to change reality.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, my first book was called Conscious Healing. Right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this was published first, but prior to that, I had written a novel that I'm in the process of releasing again called Beginner's Luke. And I actually got a big New York publishing contract for it that I turned down because I wasn't happy giving away all the power, because they were breaking it into 6 volumes, and you know, they were going to give me a contract on the first 2 volumes, but the publication of volumes 4, 5, and 6, 3, 4, 5, and 6 were contingent on the success of that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, God, I could end up not having this ever get out there.
Yeah,
in its entirety. So I felt like I had to make this decision, and there were some other reasons. But the Beginner's Luke is about a character named Luke Solomon who imagines himself into existence. Now it's very picaresque. It's totally Kerouacian, you know. He has all kinds of crazy shenanigans that he engages in and that sort of thing. But it's kind of a metaphor for the way that we go about our lives, where we're just kind of shooting in the dark half the time and doing all kinds of crazy shit. And, you know, slowly over the course of the book, through these experiences and some tragedies that he imagines for himself, he grows in wisdom and ends up having a kind of apotheosis type of experience, which is that it's akin to this idea of the awakening or the shift in consciousness or the ascension or the enlightenment or whatever you want to call it.
Cool. Do you want me to tell you something cool?
Yeah.
Well, I was listening to you. I'm showing things on the screen while you're talking, and which you can't see. And I was looking for the Neville Goddard book, Feeling is the Secret. And I just clicked on it. And right in front of me, it says that the Feeling is the Secret. The average review is 4.44 stars.
Of course it is. That's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. It's funny, you know, before I had heard about him and that kind of thing back in the developmental phases of regenetics, but it wasn't somebody I had really gotten into, right? And so before I even knew like Feeling is the Secret or anything like that, in Potentiate Your DNA, I am contrasting era 2 medicine, which is the epigenetic mind-body medicine, to era 3, which is the non-local. And I said one way you could contrast that, in essence, this is what I said, was that it's the era 2 is the power of positive thinking, but era 3 is the power of positive feeling.
You know what you need to do?
What do I need to do?
You need to make a movie.
I'd love to make a movie. Let's make a movie.
You can't be with that. You'll have to just do the voiceover.
Yeah,
but your voice is amazing, and oh man, you could write such a good script. And I mean, I was looking at Neville's book there, Feeling is the Secret, and thinking, oh, a bit similar to The Secret, which had a lot of things missing from it, but was a massive hit. And you know, then it hit me: your voice, your knowledge, movie about this third wave. It would be huge. And it's also the best way of getting this information out to people.
Yeah, well, I'm always open to collaborating with, you know, people too. So I mean, maybe at some point in time, if you're interested in having a discussion like that, we could talk about something crazy like that. You know, maybe we could figure out some way of doing, you know, a self-produced documentary or something like that. Who knows? That could be fun.
Well, have you come across Nick Alvear at Good Lion?
You know, he and I have exchanged emails a couple of times, and he was going to have me on his show, and then something crazy happened in his life, and that kind of went away. So I haven't yet had the chance to really connect with him.
There's quite a lot of good filmmakers knocking about in this area at the moment. There's also David Mahoney was on my show earlier. He's made
right. I saw that, and you know, he and I had an email exchange at one point. Well, if you ever want to put me in contact with anybody, I would be more than interested in having a discussion with people along those lines. And I know that you also have a lot of background, you know, in this world that might come in really beneficial in putting together a script, or, you know, so I mean, there's a lot of talent in the space if we could just get our act together.
Yeah, I think it's just, you know, the last 18 months has just been like a sprint. You know, got to get as much stuff out, and you know, there's been a very clear, but you know, time-consuming and difficult to organize type period of time. But
yeah,
I'm starting to look ahead and starting to think about bigger projects. But then I'm also, you know, a bit obsessed about ascension and whether we even need to make films.
Yeah, you know, it's really funny. I mean, I'm really curious about that type of thing as well. At the same time, there's this wonderful line in one of Nako Bear's songs that came out after 2012, and he was kind of lamenting all of the things that he had not done while he was sort of twiddling his thumbs, waiting on this rapture, right? And
Yeah, exactly.
and so the line was time-based prophecies that keep us from living.
Absolutely, 100%. That has been my experience, and that's why I'm actually making plans.
So that's where I am too. I mean, if you know, if things go to shit and we die tomorrow, or if we ascend, it doesn't really matter. I want to live today as a creator, and I want to really be in the thick of my own creative process.
It's the best place to be.
It is the best place to be. I wish people could understand that. Sometimes people come to me and they feel stuck, or they feel unhealed, or, you know, whatever it is. And aside from just recommending my work that could help them, the other thing I will say to people is find something that you love and just start doing it.
Yeah, but you see, you're a one-man plasma field of potentiality, and not many people are like you.
I get that a lot, except I see people transform all the time, so I think I'm not that special.
Yeah, I know. That's what makes you even better.
Well, I have front row seats to people just doing amazing things. Sometimes it's in relation to my work, and sometimes it's not, you know, but it doesn't really matter. But I see it, and I get feedback and emails and testimonials and everything. And it's really amazing. People can just absolutely reinvent overnight. And sometimes it's the most unlikely people.
That's 100% true. If you told me I'd be known for poetry 2 years ago, I'd have laughed at you.
Oh no, that's really, really a hoot. I mean, you really came into it and got it out there. I mean, you know, kudos to you. I mean, you kind of just exploded on the scene.
Yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But, you know, there's nothing without risk. And I just took a risk. And to be honest, I just did what I was told.
I love it. I love it. Those are the best stories, you know. They really are. I feel the same way too. I feel like I've been lived as much as I live.
Yeah. Well, you're still doing amazing. You're doing amazing work. I'm going to get a list of websites off you because you've got quite a lot of them, and I'll put them underneath this video for people to find your stuff, buy your books, check out the healing. So much to, because you're a Renaissance man, aren't you?
Well, it takes one to know one, I guess.
I don't know. I feel like a hobbit next to a wizard when I talk to you.
Well, I think that's absurd.
I have my own abilities. But
I just love to hear you talk. It's like, you know, I wish I could assemble language so quickly and adroitly. It's like, you know, it's just a melodic thing that I experience when I hear you talk.
Oh, thank you. My voice is actually, I just realized I've done 6 hours of podcasting today, and I really should go to bed.
Right, you probably should. Yeah, I know. Yeah. You kind of worked me in. I do appreciate you having me on the show. I was hoping we could have a little chat, and I actually feel like, you know, we've made some other interesting connections, and maybe those will blossom into some new territory.
Yeah, that would be good. When we're living in the same time zone, we can do one in the morning for both of us. Are you coming this way? I would love to come that way. Once certain fake presidents have been removed.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Well, you know, they did finally lift the you know, jab requirement here, and for people coming into the country, so that was a positive thing. Yeah, but you still got to have a test or something, haven't you? Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I wouldn't be jumping at you know, jumping. And
I don't really want to do the fake thing because that's like playing their system.
Right. I get it. But if you do end up here, I'm in St. Augustine, Florida. So please come and visit.
Whereabouts is that in Florida?
That is in the northeastern part, just under Jacksonville.
Oh yeah.
And St. Augustine is the oldest city in the United States.
I was in Sarasota for a while.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful too. That's got all that wonderful mid-century architecture and the Gulf.
Yeah, I love the architecture.
Oh no, we used to live out in Palm Springs, California, which is really the epicenter of mid-century architecture, and Sarasota is not far behind. We lived in a condo community that was built in that style, and it was so magical. Just the energy, the feng shui of it, it was so extraordinary.
That could take us down a whole Tartarian road, which we're not going to do tonight. Because
well, I have been doing the Tartarian thing. In fact, I am interviewing this time in an hour Dave Weiss, Flat Earth Dave.
Oh, I love Flat Earth Dave.
Yeah, so he and I are about to have a conversation, and I've been studying this stuff insanely for the last several months, listening to all of John Levi's stuff and Mind Unveiled and Wim Carret's work, and so it's going to be interesting.
Have you come across Campbell at Autodidactic?
Only by name. I haven't delved into that material. I've found that daunting how much there is out there. You talk about me being an academic, and I was, and I encounter this stuff, and it's just hours and hours and hours of very high quality video. Yeah,
it's incredible. There's a lot of people have done a lot of work. I've come to the conclusion it's a toroidal field.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what Wim Carret is saying. And so he's basically marrying the flat earth and the global model together. And it's fascinating. And he's very focused on the toroidal field as being the native frequency of this place where we are. And he's really kind of one of the fathers or creators of the crater earth concept. So he says that we are being colonized by an artificial field. And I won't steal this thunder, but it's probably not what you think it is. And it's very challenging because, you know, it challenged some of my beliefs and even some of my work, you know, but I had to just open myself up to looking at what he was saying. And I don't know if he's right, but I get how he could reach those conclusions.
Well, it is endlessly fascinating because there's some people that I've spoken to, like Kent Dunn, the Pleiadian, says it's flat. And then Alex Collier, the Andromedan, says he's seen it from space and it's round. I've got other people that have their higher selves have seen it. It's toroidal, or it's interdimensional, or it shifts shape.
Right, exactly. I'm in the same place. I'm in a I don't know, you know, space, and I'm endlessly fascinated by it.
Yeah.
But it really brings me back to this idea that we're living on a goddess of some kind. And when you look at the idea of crater Earth, or that the moon is a reflection of the Earth's surface, if that's true, and there's reason to believe that it might be, then the actual Earth, not this little crater that we're in, is massive.
Much bigger.
It's huge, and it just kind of goes on forever. And isn't that what you would expect from a goddess?
That's what I want. I want, you know, I was saying to my son the other day, he's just sailed around this country in the Round Island race. He's the youngest competitor.
Oh, wow.
It's a great achievement. He's not even 18.
That is impressive.
Yeah. And he you know, I was telling him about the true size of Earth, and I said, imagine it, just sailing forever.
Right. You know, for years of your life, and you're still not getting anywhere.
And being immortal, so it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, I have a distinct feeling we need to talk again. Maybe you can come on my show.
I'd love to. Yeah. Anytime I can, I will. Yeah.
Well, what I'll do is I'll send you an email at some point and propose some times, and we'll see if we can work something out.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure speaking to you again, Sol. You're an amazing guy, and I really appreciate the time to chat. I'm sorry I'm tired tonight, but I need to live in a different part of the world.
Yeah, well, let me know if you get plans and you know you're heading somewhere. That would be very interesting. I'd love to hook up in person.
There is Danny Henderson's running an interesting conference in Florida, I think in October, that I might try to get to.
Do you know where that is? Which part?
Not off the top of my head. I'd have to ring her or go to her website or something.
Well, if you think to, you know, drop me a line if you hear where that is, I'd love to know.
Yeah, I'm on a website and she's not got it on there. Oh, has she? Public appearances.
What is the website?
It's Dani, DANI, spiritualtherapist.com. But I don't think she's put anything up about the conference on that site. But anyway, yeah, I will. Well,
to be continued, then we'll see if that actually happens.
All right. Great to speak to you, Sol.
Great speaking to you too. Thanks so much for having me.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.